What's up, guys? So today I finished a book called A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and I'm going to talk about it. So I'm just going to put away the obvious. Yes, I did get a haircut. So if my hair goes from fixed to messed up throughout this video, it's because I'm still trying to figure out how to make this haircut work. So get that out of the way. Now we can talk about this book. So I started this book at the end of April. And I finally finished it. I wanted to finish it in time for the sequel release on May 3rd, but that didn't happen. I have been in an enormous reading slump, and so the fact that I finally finished this just made me feel so good about myself. So, A Court of Thorns and Roses is Sarah J. Maas's new adult series, and it is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. So basically, the main character, Feyre, is hunting in the woods one day, and she comes across an enormous wolf, and she shoots it and kills it. Now, this wolf ends up being a fairy, and later on, a beast comes, tears down her cottage, and requests her life in return for the one that she took. So now Feyre has to live in the fairy world with this beast, and yeah, so that's kind of the vague description of this story. And it's really, really good. You guys need to read it. I liked it more than Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight. I'd probably put its enjoyment level for me in between Crown of Midnight and Heir of Fire. Especially towards the end, it started to get a lot better. So I really recommend this book to fans of Sarah J. Maas and just fans of fantasy in general, because it's a really, really good fantasy series. Don't let the fact that there are fairies in it turn you off from this book. It's very, very good, and it's not fairies like you would expect from a Disney movie or something like that, where they're all happy and stuff like that. They're like monsters, basically. So that is it for the non-spoilery section of this review. If you have not read this book, you need to go pick it up. And if you have, let's discuss it. So I will see you guys in the spoilery section. So the first thing that I really, really liked about this book is how we see how much Feyre is the main breadwinner in her family. Her dad is basically a cripple, and her two sisters, they're not going to go and do anything for the family, so it's really up to Feyre to keep her family alive. And I think Sarah illustrated that great in the first section of this book, and I just felt really, really bad for Feyre. Because of what her mother made her promise on her mother's deathbed, like, Feyre can't get out of this. This is her responsibility. And then they go to Prythian, and Tamlin and Lucian are there. I really liked both of those guys a lot. I'm really excited to see where their characters go later on. And all this time, Feyre is trying to get away and go back to her lands because she's like, I need to take care of my family. And then we find out that Tamlin has glamored them with his magic, and they're all taken care of. They're rich now, and they have no idea that any of that ever happened. I'm just going to kind of skip around like the middle of the book because nothing really monumental happens in that point. I'm going to skip to the last like third of the book where she goes under the mountain. So right before she goes under the mountain, Tamlin has sent her away because this blight is getting really, really serious and is like taking down their borders and stuff like that. So she goes home, and we find out her family's rich, and after a while, Nesta never, ever forgot anything. She remembered everything, and she even went to look for Feyre. That is crazy, because, like, we thought, oh my gosh, Nesta's the worst, and for the first half, I was like, can she just, like, die or something? And Sarah J. Maas just knows how to make you feel one way about a character at one point, and then 2 seconds later, you feel completely different about them. That happens a few times in this book, and with Nesta, that was one of the big things. Go from hating her guts to actually being like, hey, you're pretty cool. Feyre is like, I need to go back, and I need to help Tamlin. Because she's like, that's my home, and I need to go there. She gets there, and the mansion is abandoned, and then she's snooping around and everything. She finds Alice. And Alice tells her how this Amarantha was, like, at war with the humans, and her sister fell in love with one of the human soldiers, and it turns out he was taking advantage of her, and he ended up killing her, and then Amarantha killed him, and she's just out of her mind, and she hates humans and everything that they're for. So then Feyre is like, hey, take me under the mountain. And so Alice takes her there. I will say, my one complaint with this book is that it goes full-blown Throne of Glass in the last half. All the trials, I was like, you know, this feels really familiar to to the beginning of another one of Sarah J. Maas's series. Oh yeah, Throne of Glass. But it did have a new spin on it, and I really liked that. Another thing, though, is that I found the riddle way too easy to solve. Within 30 seconds of me reading the riddle, I had already figured out, oh, it's love. Right before that, probably 25 seconds after reading it, I was like, oh, it's Amarantha. And then I was like, no, stupid head, it is love. And then that just, I found that way too easy, and I wish it had been a little bit harder to solve. I just wanted to yell at Farrah the entire time, the answer is love, kiddo, it's love. You know, just figure that out. The first test was super, like, edge of your seat, like, where is this worm? And then you find out it's blind, and it's going off of, like, scent, and she covers herself in the mud, she makes a trap, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is awesome. That's another thing, is every single one of the trials was super, super edge of your seat intense. The one where Lucian is behind that thing, and the grate's coming down, and she has to pull one of the levers, and she, like, her hand hurts, Reeson helps her out. That was great. Then she ends up, like, her arm gets super messed up from the worm trial, and Reeson has to come, and he makes a deal with her. I haven't talked about Reeson yet. I like Reeson a lot. I like him. You know how in Throne of Glass you had Kale and Dorian? And for me, Dorian I liked a lot better than Kale. In this book, it's Reeson and Tamlin. And I'd say this is Tamlin and this is Reeson. And for, again, Dorian and Kale, it was like Dorian and Kale. And there was a big difference for me. For this one, I liked Reeson a lot better than I liked Kale in the Throne of Glass at the beginning. So I'll get to the ships at the end. But yeah, so Farrah trades a week of each month for the rest of her life with Reeson if he will save her. And we go through all the times where she's meeting in the throne room, and it's like, why is Tamlin just sitting there? And he doesn't say anything because he doesn't want to mess something up, and so you really feel bad for him because you know he just wants to scream his head off and kill Amarantha, but he can't. Now I'm going to skip to the end. When the 3 people got brought in for the final trial, I was like, no, no, no. I thought for a second it was Reeson, Lucian, and Alice. And then after a second I was like, no, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, oh my gosh, Alice has 2 nephews. That's who it is. Her 2 nephews, oh my gosh. When she killed the first dude, I was like, no, 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 no. And then they pulled the sack off the second head, and it wasn't Alice. And I was like, oh. No big deal. And you get to the 3rd one, they pull the sack off his head, and it's Tamlin. And she looks up, and then the actor standing right there with, he shape-shifted, and it was like, oh my gosh. And you were like, what? And then, for me, the best part of the book happens where she's like, wait a second. They've been saying stuff about him having a heart of stone. And this entire time, I was thinking, oh, it's just because he's really tough and stuff like that. And he never really lets anybody in. He's a really, like, cold person. He doesn't show much emotion. I thought that's what it was talking about. And then it was, Sarah just dropped the bomb on us and it was like, no, he actually has a stone heart. And then we find out he was letting Farrah hear all those conversations. He purposely left the door open. He purposely hid her in clear sight so that he could hear everything. Oh my gosh. She just stabs him right in the heart, and then Amarantha just attacks her and is just beating her down and breaking her bones. And you're like, oh my gosh. And you see Reeson, he's like coming up behind Amarantha. He's like, ah. And then she pushes him back, and you're like, what? And, yeah. And then it just all happens so fast, where she solves the riddle, and I was like, I told you it was love. I told you 100 pages ago, but at least you figured it out now. And Tamlin just rages, he tears out her throat, stabs her with a sword through the wall, and it's just like, oh my God. I just really butchered everything that I was saying. Didn't probably make much sense, but I just kind of said a bunch of stuff that happened in the end. And that's pretty much it. I'm super excited for the sequel now. Again, I didn't love this book as much as I loved the latest 2 Throne of Glass books, but it's still amazing. I still loved it, just not as much as those 2. That's pretty much it for what I have to say about A Court of Thorns and Roses. I ship her and Tamlin more than I ship her and Reeson, but I can definitely see how that could change throughout the series. I don't know how long the series is going to be. Like, Throne of Glass is going to be 6 books. Is this going to be 6 books, or is this going to be a trilogy? I don't think so, because it's not called the A Court of Thorns and Roses trilogy. It's called the series, so I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't really know which direction it's going to go now that Amaranth is dead. It's like, what other villains are there? Like, they've taken back Prithian, and I just don't know. I will see you guys the next time that I see you.